Chapter 541, Torrent of Sword Intent. The conflagration spit out by the skull was Moju's second soul skill, Dark Demon Flames. The flames burned away at both body and spirit, and it was exceptionally potent for a mere second soul skill. Furthermore, it possessed corrosive and adhesive properties. Anyone misfortunate enough to be slathered in it wouldn't be able to shake it off and have their flesh burned away to the bone. Yi Xinglan faced the flames with serenity. Her eyes held not the flames nor Moju. Her sword was her world of shining stars. It looked as if her pupils had turned into vertical slits, but that was just the form of her sword reflected in her eyes. Brandishing her sword, Yi Xinglan unleashed Sword God Star. Motes of resplendent starlight surged forth, piercing through the demonic flames to strike the skull. A small crack formed on the skull, then it scattered into embers. But those embers gathered into a stream and shot toward Yi Xinglan. Yet a meter away from reaching her, they parted to the sides, as if cut apart by an invisible blade. Yi Xinglan's sword intent charged the heavens. Slashing out with her sword, she weaved countless sword beams into a giant net flying toward Moju. Moju threw up her hands to summon a defense of murky darkness, but it was all cut to tatters by the sword beams. What the hell? Many of the audience members swallowed their spit, wetting their throats that had dried from hanging mouths. Prior to the start of the match, they had assumed this would be a sure victory for Moju. Yet in the opening moments, Moju was already pressed into the defensive. Her mighty black swan soul skills were nothing before this unknown Yi Xinglan girl. They couldn't believe it. A girl from the first grade was gaining ground on Moju, a 5-ring soul king and a pillar of the third grade. Such a situation couldn't be because of a difference in the quality of martial souls. The black swan was a top-tier darkness attribute martial soul after all. Even if the Star God sword was powerful, it couldn't suppress the black swan. No, the difference was due to something else entirely. It was a fundamental gap in their comprehension of their martial souls. Yi Xinglan's strength was not her soul skills, but her sword intent. She had trained for many years to understand her path of the sword, and it was the sword intent that she cultivated that earned her entry into Shrek Academies Inner Court. If not for the change in admission requirements, so only one-word battle armor masters were admitted, a talent of her caliber would still be in the Inner Court. Tang Wolin had been helpless against her the first time they fought. He had been utterly suppressed by the might that stemmed from her understanding of her Star God sword. All that existed in Yi Xinglan's world was the sword, and the sword reflected herself as her Star God, who twisted into a maelstrom that saturated the air with sword intent. Moju choked on the oppressive aura and grimaced as she darted backward to evade. She knew that she had lost the initiative, and if she let this continue on, she would be completely suppressed. She refused to lose to this first raider. Moju flared open her wings as her third soul skill lit up. Dark green light enveloped her wings, and with a powerful flap, she sent a wave of light crashing toward the Star God weave. The net of sword beams was dyed deep green upon contact with the wave of light. Then they corroded into nothingness. The wave of light was so potent that it had even corroded holes in the air itself. This was the power of her third soul skill, Dark Corrosion. It was an attack of hyper-condensed darkness element that devoured all that stood in its way. In fact, Moju had first gained admittance into Shrek Academy by relying on this dreadful soul skill. Yi Xinglan did not falter before Dark Corrosion. She swung her sword up from the earth to rend the heavens, unleashing a roaring sword wave. The instant the two attacks collided, the sword wave shined resplendently, as if laughing to itself. Then it pierced through Dark Corrosion with its own sword intent. Trailing right behind, Yi Xinglan completely avoided taking any damage by leaping through the hole created by her attack, soaring straight toward Moju. She's strong. The audience members stared slack-jawed. They could tell from her bearing that she harbored no thoughts of defeat even before an opponent as great as Moju. Hot anger flashed through Moju's eyes. It was unthinkable for her to let a junior get this far. She could just summon her battle armor right now, but as a 5-ring soul king, it would be shameful to use battle armor first against a 4-ringed opponent. Her pride wouldn't allow it. Absolutely not. Moju's fourth soul ring lit up as she waved her hand and conjured a dark green lance that was topped by 3 souls. Then the lance began to spin and energy streams of grey, green, and crimson gathered around it and poured into the skulls, 1 stream each. Each of those skulls brimming with energy possessed the power of a curse, weakness, fear, and pain. Then the skulls let out a burst of light that swept through the entire arena. It was impossible for Yi Xinglan to evade in midair, and an instant later she was slathered in 3 eerie energies. Her aura dwindled and sword intent dulled. Inflicted with the curses of weakness, fear, and pain, Yi Xinglan no longer posed such a great threat to Moju. Letting out a sigh of relief, Moju stilled her hands slight trembles as she remembered the oppressive might of Yi Xinglan's rising slash. It was her first time facing such a fierce attack from someone whose soul power was so much weaker. Moju pointed her lance at Yi Xinglan, gathering the power of curses to its tip. In an instant, the lance was fully charged and it unleashed a dark green beam at Yi Xinglan. Having just touched the ground, Yi Xinglan's head was lowered and she didn't see Moju's attack. But the moment looked up, she revealed eyes filled with dazzling determination. Her eyes bloomed with starlight as she raised her sword to the heavens and howled, unleashing a burst of starlight. A torrent of sword intent rushed out of her and fused with the twinkling starlight in the air, dispelling the curses on her. Upon the platform for elders, Jowoshi nodded as he observed with approving eyes. One sword to slay all truths. This girl has really reached a peak. Sword energy filled the sky, lingering in the air, tangible with permanence. When the dark green beam of curses met the sword energy in the air, the two rapidly consumed each other, but the sword energy held the advantage, maintaining its form longer than the beam of curses. Yi Xinglan looked beyond the clash of energies to meet the gaze of her astonished opponent. Her third soul ring lit up and her eyes flickered gold. Then she shot into the air cloaked in golden radiance. Becoming one with her sword, she unleashed her third soul skill, Starfall Sword. Moju furrowed her brow. Her opponent exceeded her expectations by far. None of her curses had been effective, which was partly related to the Star God sword possessing the attribute of light, but more so Yi Xinglan's own sword intent. Her sword intent's edge was keen enough to slice apart even curses. Moju flapped her wings and unleashed an onslaught of jet black feathers at the rising star. Some of the feathers diverged and swirled around her. Yi Xinglan shot toward Moju as a shooting star, her sword intent slicing through the air with a shrill shriek. Even the audience members could feel the dreadful power of her sword intent, which caused goosebumps all over their body. All of that sword intent was concentrated into this single attack. Yi Xinglan had devoted herself to cultivating her sword. All that mattered to her was her sword, and not even her friends could get in the way of that. Every day she trained with her sword and nothing else. She practiced with the patience of a sage and unrivaled determination. None of her peers could compare to her in these two qualities. The students of the second grade knew all too well the tyrannical might of the Star God sword. She had easily held her ground 1 against 3 with her sword and skills. Every time she appeared in battle, she was far stronger than the last. The black feathers collided with the starlight but couldn't withstand its power and were rapidly destroyed. But the feathers had done their job of weakening the starlight attack and buying Moju some time. Those feathers had been Moju's 5th soul skill, Swan Feathers. Yet her 5th soul skill, the ultimate power of the Soul King, was an even match for Starfall Sword, a mere 3rd soul skill, and this was despite their gap in soul power. Moju continued sending onslaught after onslaught of feathers at Yi Xinglan, further imbuing them with the dark green energy of curses to erode her light attribute stellar sword energy. Moments later, the Yi Xinglan sword energy dimmed back to normal and the stalemate was broken. Moju had retaken the initiative. While it was obvious to anyone with eyes that Yi Xinglan had better martial soul control than Moju, it was undeniable that Moju's cultivation was far superior. Chapter 542, One-word battle armor master. Waves of purple rippled through the sky, the splendor of a purple soul ring blossoming. Yi Xinglan finally used her 4th soul skill, taking advantage of the knockback from Moju's swan feathers. Yi Xinglan kicked off them and ascended higher into the air. With a twist of her body, she whipped out her sword and repelled the rest of the feather onslaught. The golden light around her kindled with renewed life, blinding light bursting from her body. The heavens froze as Yi Xinglan ascended in a golden streak accompanied by countless streaks of sword energy, thin as threads. They poured down like a starry rain and washed away the encroaching darkness of the swan feathers. After the feathers of darkness, the torrent continued on toward Moju, a baptism of stellar sword energy. How is this possible? Her 4th soul skill is stronger than my 5th. Moju's eyes widened in shock and furrowed her brows. Letting the shock pass through her system, she gritted her teeth and pressed on, summoning all of her soul power to continue her assault of feathers. But the difference in might was clear. In this back and forth between the stellar rain and the feathers of darkness, darkness, the rain was gaining ground. Moju had yet to directly face Yizinglin's sword intent, but her palms were growing sweaty as she felt in the encroaching mass of condensed sword intent. This was the might of Yizinglin's fourth soul skill, stellar sword rain. As wave after wave of rain crashed into the feathers, Moju was pushed back. She wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. She glared at Yizinglin and bit her lap, but resolved herself. Even if she didn't want to resort to this, she refused to lose. She understood that she could not win in a battle with just their martial souls. Her eyes shone with passionate determination now. Moju threw out her right hand, and a lump of dark green light flew out. It swerved back to her in an arc and into her stomach. A metallic ting rang out, and a breastplate appeared on her well-endowed chest. She thrust out both hands next, pieces of armor flying out of her storage rings and onto her body. In an instant, Moju was clad in dark green armor. Its design was plain without any decorative patterns, but every piece fitted her well and accentuated her womanly features. With the armor equipped, the strength of her aura doubled and her swan feathers were empowered. At last, she began to gain ground in the clash between feathers and stellar rain. Now that the stellar rain was no longer right upon Moju, her battle armor was clear for all to see. It was a complete set of magnificent dark green armor and a circlet decorated with 3 feathers crowning her head. As she floated in the air, she stretched out her body and her armor let out a reverberating cry as it began to glow. Her aura blazed with power, its might rapidly rising. Her swan feathers multiplied in number and thoroughly suppressed the stellar rain now. Off stage, Songlin put her hand to her chin and furrowed her brows as she watched. A dull sigh left her lips. There was no doubt that this match was Moju's victory now. Once equipped with her battle armor, Moju's strength rivaled that of a soul sage. But anyone with decent eyes could tell that she was losing beforehand. If she hadn't equipped her battle armor, she would have eventually lost to Yizinglin. She had only summoned her armor because she was backed into a corner. Damn, these first graders are real monsters. Just how strong can they get? The name of my battle armor is Heaven. With her battle armor a complete one-word set, she had the qualifications to name it. The name she chose stemmed from the reference to the heavens and the meaning of swan. Thus, she was Heaven Moju. Although the difference between Moju's full set of 11 battle armor pieces versus Yi Wu's 8 seemed small, the change to Molan's aura refuted such assumptions. It was as great as night and day. Darkness descended upon the arena, choking out the stellar rain. Another wave of swan feathers flew out at Yizinglin, whose aura of iridescent starlight was dimming back to normal as her second soul skill wore off. The tables had turned. Even as the last of the starlight extinguished from her body, Yizinglin remained unperturbed, but in the very depths of her light was a frenzied light. She had never given up, and today wouldn't be the day she did. In fact, it was because of her unwillingness to admit defeat that she and Tang Wulin had fought so fiercely until the end of their first meeting. She cared not that her opponent was a 5-ring soul king, nor that they were a one-word battle armor master. None of that mattered. If losing was inevitable, then she would only do so after displaying her full strength. Once she did that, she could lose with her head held high. Yizinglin tightened her grip on her starguard sword. A light enveloped her hands and manifested as gauntlets. Then the light on her right hand spread up her arm and formed a pauldron as well. With the appearance of her battle armor, the waning power of sword star rain surged forth once more. This was Yizinglin's might. A pair of gauntlets and a pauldron for her right shoulder. 3 pieces of battle armor crafted of spirit alloys. Although her armor was few, they empowered her sword star rain enough to hold back the dark tide of feathers. 3 pieces of battle armor. She's already got 3 pieces in her second year here, and they're all crafted of spirit alloys. All of the teachers and students of the upper grades were shocked. These kids are monsters. The higher-ups of Shrek Academy had long since heard murmurs of the first grade class possessing pieces of one-word battle armor made of spirit alloys. However, they had thought those only to be rumors. This was their first time verifying with their own eyes, and the proof was not 1, but 3 pieces of such battle armor. Across all of the grades, there were few who recognized battle armor crafted of spirit alloys. Those who didn't recognize it could only marvel and wonder why Yizinglin's battle armor seemed as powerful as 2-word pieces. The difference in power amplification between spirit alloy battle armor and normal armor pieces of the same grade wasn't too great, but because it was made of spirit alloys, there was definitely an increase in its amplification effects and durability. Even so, 3 pieces of spirit alloy battle armor should only match 5 pieces of ordinary armor. Among Tang Wulin's entire team, Yizinglin possessed the most pieces of armor. It was the most efficient choice to focus on her armor first since she was their main armor maker. With each additional piece of armor she gained, her success rate and quality of work increased. The answer had been obvious from the beginning, so as soon as everyone on their team had 1 piece of armor, they shifted gears to focusing on her armor. Once her set was finished, she could rapidly churn out armor for the other members. Her 3 pieces of battle armor were the result of this decision. Yizinglin's battle armor shed specks of starlight as it empowered her sword star rain to push back against the flood of feathers. However, her opponent was a true one-word battle armor master. Her mere 3 pieces only increased her sword star rain enough to push back momentarily before the feathers began to gain ground again. In the face of the storm of darkness, Yizinglin's gaze remained resolute, and her first and third soul rings began shining at the same time. The audience watched with anticipation. Using multiple soul skills at once was a high-level technique that was difficult even for students of the legendary Shrek Academy. It required a deep understanding of one's martial soul and precise control to pull off. It was clear that Yizinglin had succeeded in the technique as the stellar aura around her reignited with strength. The rain of starlight reversed flow in the sky and converged on Yizinglin. Her figure disappeared in the congregation of starlight, and a moment later a giant star god sword floated in her place. The fusion of countless strands of condensed sword intent. It was the result of combining sword star rain, starfall sword, and sword god star. Chapter 543. Yizinglin's conviction. The torrent of swan feathers engulfed the shining sword, leaving it a shining beacon in a sea of darkness. The sword weathered wave after wave of feathers, its immaculate blade growing dimmer as it resisted the attacks. Now empowered by Moju's set of one-word battle armor, the feathers sliced through the air with deadly might. The auras of darkness thick and inky. The entire stage was dancing along to Moju's tune now, and she regarded Yizinglin from up above as if she were looking at an ant. She knew all of Yizinglin's struggles were futile and were only delaying the inevitable. But as Moju basked in her power, the floating star god sword began to hum. The sword slashed down and blew away the feathers around it, opening up a path to Moju for it to jet through. Before the trailblazing sword, all the feathers obstructing its path disintegrated and a shockwave of imposing might followed swiftly behind it. Moju's brows jumped in astonishment, a short yelp escaping her lips. Despite the gap in strength opened up by her equipping her battle armor, the star god sword still attacked relentlessly. The baleful aura the sword emitted as starlight swirled around her sword form would not forgive any restraint on Moju's part. Even as the sword endured the tempest, it quickly advanced on Moju. With a beat of her wings, she retreated and opened up a cautious distance between them. While maintaining a safe distance between them, Moju unleashed wave after wave of swan feathers at the sword. The gap in strength between them made her insurmountable. In the stands, the audience watched with gilled eyes, all refusing to miss a single moment of the battle. They could never forgive themselves for not witnessing the entirety of the power of a one-word battle armor master. The star god's sword blow rapidly faded under the onslaught of feathers. Its advance slowing to a crawl, but it pressed on. No matter how much it wavered or how clear defeat was, it pressed on. The battle was already decided. A hint of a smile spread across Moju's face. Although this wasn't a clean victory, it was still a victory she could delight in. Just as Moju was reveling in her victory, stray specks of starlight enlarged and shot toward her. They swerved through the small openings in the storm of feathers and advanced upon her, arriving a meter away from her before she even noticed. Then the starlight coalesced into Yizinglin's form just as the light of the star god sword was extinguished by the tempest of feathers behind her. But she held another star god sword in her hand and leaned forward to slash Moju from shoulder to waist. Moju's battle armor burst with light as it fought to counter Yizinglin's blow. The sword slashed stopped at Moju's shoulder, but empowered by 3 pieces of spirit alloy battle armor, the torrent of sword intent enveloping the sword was able to penetrate Moju's armor and into her body. A cry of pain escaped Moju's lips as the energy rampaged within her. Yizinglin pressed her attack and didn't give Moju a moment to react. In a flicker of movement, she moved to Moju's rear and struck with her shining starguard sword and unleashed starguard with a point-blank range. As the sword blades blossomed into Moju's back, her battle armor shined resplendently as they fought to neutralize the attack. But her armor couldn't mitigate all of the attacks and crimson lines appeared all over the exposed parts of her back, eliciting a shrill shriek. Even after slicing her flesh, the energy of the starguard weave continued and penetrated into her core, wreaking havoc on her internal organs and meridians. Everything had happened too fast to process, lasting no longer than a blink of an eye. Not even Elder Kai had expected such a turnaround just when the battle seemed over. Moju's battle armor shone radiantly in the eye of the storm of sword beams as she frantically defended herself. Yet every time she tried to summon a defense by countering with her own soul skills, a coffin of thousands of sharp needles of sword intent would pierce her body and interrupt her soul skill invocation. No matter how great her battle armor was, it was not absolute. There were plenty of chinks in the armor armor to exploit. Now trapped in close quarter combat, Moju's ability to counterattack was thoroughly suppressed. Yi Xinglin's sword intent was mighty to begin with, but after resolving herself and focusing her mind, its edge grew even sharper. Her third soul ring lit up as she pulled back her sword to ready her next attack. Starfall sword. This time, the golden light of the soul skill did not envelop just herself, but Moju as well. The two transformed into streaks of gold as they shot toward the ceiling, not slowing the slightest as they crashed into the barrier. While waves rippled out in the barrier from the side of impact in the barrier, it was wholly intact still. It was as expected since the barrier could withstand attacks from up to an 8-ring soul Douluo. As a result of its defensive ability, it acted as a giant rubber band while the two crashed into it and bounced them away with several times their initial speed. The golden streak slammed into the ground with a bang, web cracks forming in the ground around it and dust flying into the air. As the golden light died, the two girls were revealed. Yi Xinglin sat on top of Moju with her knees jabbed into the ladder's stomach. She had a death grip on her Star God sword, which had penetrated through a chink in Moju's armor and drew blood. She hung her head low, utterly motionless. On the other hand, Moju lay on the ground, expression blank as she stared at the ceiling in a daze. No one had expected this battle to grow so heated. It was unimaginable for a one-word battle armor master like Moju to have trouble against an ordinary soul master with fewer rings than her. Elder Kai and Yali shot out of their seats and sped toward the two combatants, reaching them in an instant. Moju still retained consciousness thanks to her battle armor mitigating most of the damage, but the ferocity Yi Xinglin displayed had struck fear into her. Her eyes quivered as she stared at Yi Xinglin kneeling atop her. Despite Yi Xinglin's eyes shut tight, chilling sword intent still rolled off her in swathes. It all sent shivers down Moju's spine, cold sweat running down her spine. When Yi Xinglin had sent the two of them soaring toward the ceiling, Moju had a chance to stare into eyes filled with unyielding tenacity. Yi Xinglin's fervent gaze was seared into Moju's mind. Considering Yi Xinglin's current strength, she shouldn't have been able to penetrate the defenses of a full set of one-word battle armor with nearly 3 pieces of armor herself. However, she had taken advantage of Starfall sword and the barrier's rebound to make a small crack in Moju's armor and impale her shoulder. As the last of Yi Xinglin's remnant sword intent dissipated, Moju's mind gained some freedom to become conscious of the cold blade pierced through her shoulder and the warm blood leaking out. This girl is insane. Moju trembled, her limbs refusing to move as she desperately tried to throw Yi Xinglin off and run away. She had always been a shining star in the 3rd grade, and her status had only grown loftier when she became a one-word battle armor master and her entry into the inner court became certain. But today, she realized just how much she was lacking. While she had more than enough strength, she couldn't compare with Yi Xinglin in battle intent, the thirst for victory. When Yi Xinglin finally collapsed onto the ground, Moju was finally able to crawl away. Then Yali walked over and picked up Yi Xinglin and began healing her with soft tendrils of light from her fingertips. Moju had burned up all of her soul power in that final clash as she unleashed her full power dark corrosion, and in the final moments, she had used her pauldron to defend against the Star God sword, but her shoulder had still been pierced. With Elder Kai's assistance, Moju was able to slowly stand up. In spite of this being her victory, her eyes were lifeless. It was the obvious conclusion since Yi Xinglin had only managed to make a chink in Moju's armor and draw a trickle of blood. The wound was far from fatal. In fact, it would have been easy for Moju to turn the tables on Yi Xinglin after they had crashed since Yi Xinglin collapsed, cinching her victory. But this couldn't truly be considered a win, not in her heart at least. The 3rd grade wins, Elder Kai announced in a tone of indifference. Blood trickled out of the wound in Moju's shoulder and her body swayed gently. The proclamation of her victory sounded like ridicule to her ears. Victory had never felt so hollow. The students of the 3rd grade harbored much the same emotions as Moju. None cheered for their victory. They couldn't bring themselves to. There was no honor in this win. After a beam of light descended on Moju and healed her injuries, she turned and walked off stage, back to her teammates. Songlin was waiting to greet her when she returned. When she arrived in front of Songlin, she finally remembered to unequip her battle armor and crack a deprecating smile. Teacher Song, did I really win? After this quip, all strength left her body and she toppled forward. Songlin hurriedly caught Moju in her arms. After seeing the exhaustion in her student's face, she raised her head, suppressed a snarl. She knew that while Moju had not lost the match, she had lost in conviction. Moju's heart had been too weak and her mental state was damaged. Wounds of the mind were the hardest to cure. If Moju could not overcome her mental blocks, then she would never be able to enter the inner court. The entire 3rd grade was enveloped in silence. The duels were concluded with 2 losses and 1 victory, but that victory had been hard-earned. Furthermore, Moju was in no condition to participate in the team battle anymore. It was tough for them to swallow the fact that a one-word battle armor master like her had completely dominated their junior schoolmate. Chapter 544, shocking the audience. Yi Xinglin's intensity left everyone in the audience stunned. She didn't have a full set of battle armor, yet she still put Moju on the defensive. She showed them all that even a soul master could stand up to a battle armor master. The Holy Spirit Douluo carried Yi Xinglin back to her teammates. I didn't wake her. She didn't suffer any permanent injuries, but she pushed herself too far. She needs rest. She won't be able to participate in the other matches. Gu Yue and Xu Shaoan took Yi Xinglin from Yali's arms. The Doulo's words were stern, but when they looked at her, they could only see warmth in her face. Yali smiled at them. She's quite amazing, isn't she? None of the students said anything. Their eyes blazed with determination. In their hearts, Yi Xinglin hadn't lost. She only had 4 soul rings and still she pushed a 5-ringed battle armor master to the brink of defeat. It was clear that Moju was in no condition to take part in the following matches. Yi Xinglin was the true winner of this battle. Yuan and Yui walked over to Gu Yue and Xu Shaoan, took Yi Xinglin from their arms, and carried her to a quiet place where she could rest. As he watched Yuan and Yui depart, Tang Wuling glanced at Gu Yue. She nodded at him in return. We have to win the team battle, Tang Wuling said. He and the others hadn't hoped to win this competition against the 3rd grade, but the scene of Yi Xinglin charging through a tempest of feathers, the way she penetrated Moju's armor and drew blood, all of it ignited something deep within them. They finally found their resolve. So what if they're one-word battle armor masters? Who said we can't beat them? We'll do it. We will win. All the 1st grade students in the stands were quiet. They had lost the match, so none were cheering, but Yi Xinglin's tenacity had moved them so much that it got their blood boiling. In the front row, Luo Dixing, Xu Yicheng, Yang Niangsha, and Zheng Yuan sat in stunned silence. They used to believe that one day they would catch up to Tang Wuling's team, that if they worked hard and put in the effort, they would be able to match them. Now they understood that the gap between them would never close. It only grew larger. Yi Xinglin's strength was something they couldn't even hope to overcome. The disparity between them was becoming insurmountable. Luo Dixing clenched his fists, his fingernails cutting into his palms and drawing blood. Xu Yicheng, on the other hand, was trembling. From beginning to end, his gaze never left Yi Xinglin. She's a goddess, he suddenly said. From today onward, I will worship her. The others raised a brow at him, but he ignored them. His lips were pressed tight together. His eyes were shining. They held no despair, only a thirst for battle. Yi Xinglin's battle helped him to finally understand what his own path was. Who cares if I'm frail? That my spirit soul's a low level. If I don't have a heart to take risks, how could I possibly hope to stand at the peak of the world? Talent was one thing, but courage was something else entirely. Only those with the courage to risk their lives could stand at the summit. Zheng Yuan sat there with a grim expression on her face. She had always held Tang Wuling's team in contempt, believing that their success, their victories, were all dumb luck. Now, however, she realized just how large the gap between them had grown. Unlike the others, Yang Niangsha wasn't looking at Yi Xinglin. He was looking at Tang Wuling. In the final moments of the battle, right before she fainted, he noticed that Yi Xinglin was looking at Tang Wuling. Upon noticing that, he felt something new burn within his heart, a deep, stifling emotion. He envied Yi Xinglin, but not for her strength. He envied how much her teammates trusted her, and the trust she had in them. Kids these days. Feng Wu muttered to himself up on the elders' viewing platform. They're crazy. They're all goddamn crazy. For once, Chawoshi didn't argue with him. You're absolutely right. This new generation really is the strongest of the century. Geez. That girl's even wilder than you were, and she didn't lose herself in her madness either. She continued to act with a tactic in mind. Every single move of hers led up to that one final attack. Her skill with the sword is amazing too. If I'm not mistaken, when she used that sword god star soul skill of hers, she reached the realm of becoming one with the sword and combined it with the tank's exposed shadow perplexing step. She used this to close the distance between her and her opponent. By doing so, she was also able to deal far more damage than expected to a ranged type 1-word battle armor master. That's gotta be it. At the very last moment, she didn't just surprise her opponent, she surprised us all. She's crazy and clever. I'm looking forward to her growth. She may even join the next generation of the Shrek 7 monsters. Elder Kai stood from her seat, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. In a sense, all of the outer court students could be considered her disciples, so she felt pride whenever any of them received such praise. However, she was a bit worried about the 3rd grade. She walked over to the edge of the platform and swept her gaze across the audience. Competence for the 2-on-2 match. Come forward. The representatives of the third grade took the stage. They were a boy and a girl that closely resembled each other. They seemed to be siblings, twins even. Opposite to them, Kang Wulin and Gu Yue climbed the stairs of the stage with large strides. Both pairs were suppressing their emotions, like a volcano on the verge of eruption. Once all four arrived, both sides introduced themselves. Li Mingyang of the third grade, Li Mengshan of the third grade, Tang Wulin of first grade, Gu Yue of the first grade. Murmurs began to spread among the audience. It's Li Mengshan and Li Mingyang. I heard they're assault types with amazing teamwork and a soul fusion skill. Apparently they're the core of the third grade's team. Their strength earned them a nickname. They're the invincible twin sons. The other side is sending out first grade students again. They actually sent out 2 first graders for the 2-on-2. Wasn't the girl from the previous match a first grader too? The first graders are really strong this time. Oh, you haven't heard? That Tang Wulin guy, he's the class president of the first grade. He only has 3 rings, but he's a 5th rank blacksmith already, and everyone in the first grade seems to accept him as their leader. Then there's Gu Yue. She's one of the vice presidents, but I've never heard of them working well as a duo. I heard the first and second grades had a showdown last year and the first grade won. No way. The second grade has Yuan and Yui. She's an absolute monster. I don't think anyone in the third grade is a match for her except the battle armor masters. How the hell could the first grade have one against her? It's totally possible. Didn't you see how powerful Yingling was? Or are you just blind? Our underclassmen this year are scary. If we don't work hard, they'll surpass us in the blink of an eye. Just shut up and watch. The battle's about to start. We'll find out just how strong they are soon enough. As the audience's chatter died down, Elder Kai stepped forward and looked between the combatants. Her gaze lingered on Tang Wulin and Gu Yue for a moment. Then she looked forward. Begin. As soon as the word left her lips, the Li siblings leapt into action. With a sweep of their arms, they summoned their battle armor from their storage rings, and in an instant they were equipped. They wore 5 pieces of armor total, gauntlets, pauldrons, and folds, all a deep crimson with flame patterns running along their surfaces. It was as if they had erupted in flames. Chapter 545. Crushed. The Li twins entered Shrek Academy at the young age of 12. Now, at the age of 18, both possessed 5 pieces of battle armor each. They were quite far from completing a full set of armor, but they still had 2 years left to qualify for the inner court. Furthermore, they had a soul fusion skill, which meant they would probably be given extra time to meet the requirements if necessary. As their figures transformed, actual flames soared from their armor to fill the air. Bestial cries rumbled from the twins and shook the arena. Both possessed fire attribute martial souls, but there were key differences between them. Li Mingyang roared, their voice booming broad and deep like a lion's. Li Mengshan, on the other hand, growled with the curt tenor of a tiger. A wave of might exploded from them as they summoned their soul rings, 2 yellow and 2 purple each. Tang Wulin hadn't been idle. As soon as the match began, even as his opponent summoned their battle armor, he was already low to the ground and charging forward. 2 golden rings appeared around him, bathing him in a regal glow. Although he could restrain his opponent's fire attribute with blue silver golden array, he didn't feel the need to. The desire to fight burned within him, and it would not be sated until he beat them into submission with his bare hands. Gu Yue walked forward in Tang Wulin's wake, elemental auroras manifesting around her in a shimmering display. Her eyes were glued to his back, never straying for even an instant. The Li twins took one step forward at the same time, as if they were of one mind. Their soul rings lit up, the resulting surge of energy whipping their hair into a fiery blaze. Then they took another step, and Tang Wulin was upon them. Tang Wulin's first golden ring shone with majestic light as golden scales rippled into existence across his body. It began at his right arm, continued up and across his torso, and only stopped right before it reached his left arm. His right hand twisted and transformed into a powerful dragon claw. All of this happened as he continued to rush forward, every single move of his filled with resolve. There was no hesitation in his decision to confront 2 people in direct combat at the same time. He stared at Li Mengshan, his eyes seemingly glued to the girl. Just as he reached the pair, however, he immediately stomped a foot into the ground, forcefully changing course to dart directly at Li Mingyang. He ducked low and wound up his clawed fist, and unleashed a powerful punch. Li Mingyang snorted, gaze dripping with disdain. He reared back, then leaned forward to belch a torrent of flames right at Tang Wulin. At such close range, it was impossible for Tang Wulin to evade, but he didn't bother to. Instead, he put more strength into his fist. Right at that moment, a wall of ice sprouted out from the ground between Tang Wulin and Li Mingyang. The wall blocked Li Mingyang's flames, but an instant later, it melted into a puddle and evaporated. That was when Tang Wulin's fist followed through, rushing into the space the flames had just occupied. The elders up on their viewing platform nodded in approval. Gu Yue's ice wall had been timed perfectly to defend Tang Wulin from the flames. On top of that, it melted quickly enough to allow his attack to continue through. In fact, 2 walls had been made. The first wall had been thin, just enough to block Li Mingyang's flames. The second one had appeared to the side of the 2 combatants, positioned just so to prevent Li Mengshan from interfering. Li Mingyang never expected such a perfect combo from Tang Wulin and Gu Yue. However, this didn't shake him at all. Caught off guard as he was, he still had the advantage as an assault type soulmaster of a superior soul power rank. He had nothing to fear. Li Mingyang threw out a fist of his own to match Tang Wulin's. The instant they clashed, he felt as if he had been rammed by a train. A jolt of searing pain ran up his arm, and the force of the hit sent him spinning through the air like a ragdoll. Tang Wulin's entire body had been overflowing with strength ever since he broke the 4th seal of the Golden Dragon King. Such power was unimaginable for someone of his age and number of soul rings. The third grade had investigated him, but the results of their efforts only yielded shallow and vague impressions of him. They knew he was extremely strong, but they never expected him to reach such heights. Li Mingyang had to force himself to go completely limp the moment he was sent flying. If he hadn't been so quick to do that, his arm likely would have been fractured by now. Taking the hit like that also allowed him to react immediately. Still hurtling through the air, his second soul ring lit up. His hair burst into flames as he opened his mouth. Lion's roar. A terrifying roar shook the arena once more, filling the air around Li Mingyang. The roar struck Tang Wulin, slowing his movements for an instant. At the same time, the ice wall broke apart. Li Mengshan charged through the crumbling ice, swinging at him with her tiger-pawed hands. Li Mingyang's martial soul was a fire demon lion, and Li Mengshan's was a fire demon tiger. Both souls shared a deep connection with one another. The moment one acted, the other would be swift to follow up. It was then that Tang Wulin reversed the flow of his blood essence. He planted his right foot into the ground, right as a draconic roar erupted from within him. This sudden show of draconic might interrupted Li Mingyang's roar, and in that moment, 8 phantom dragons shot out of Tang Wulin and toward the twins. Tang Wulin had unleashed golden dragon shakes the earth, an art that harnessed the power of the golden dragon king and his powerful blood essence. It was so mighty that not even Yuan and Yui could stand against it. In terms of individual strength, Li Mingyang and Li Mengshan were no match for Yuan and Yui, and only just barely made up for this difference with their advantage in battle armor. But still, a gap existed between them. Furthermore, neither of the siblings had armor for their legs yet, so their mobility was just average. Li Mengshan tried to redirect her poor strikes into the ground to rebound off the floor and evade. Up in the air, Li Mingyang could do nothing. The phantom dragons crashed into them with a boom that filled the arena. Both were sent flying in radiant arcs, their battle armor shining in an effort to mitigate the impact. Tang Wulin pressed the attack, letting out another draconic roar, and in a blur of movement he leapt at Li Mingyang. A predatory sheen flashed through his eyes as he slashed out with his claw and unleashed 5 beams of dark gold. It was his golden dragon dreadclaw. Li Mingyang was struggling to orient himself in the air when he sensed a tempest of power rapidly approaching him. His instincts screamed at him, urging him to dodge, and without hesitation he used his 4th soul skill. The corresponding soul ring lit up, and a cloak of scarlet light enveloped him. His body swelled with strength. Power surged through his enlarged arms, and he threw them over his head, using his gauntlets as a shield. Tang Wulin's dark gold beams scraped against Li Mingyang's armor with a metallic screech. Then the full brunt of the golden dragon dreadclaw came down upon Li Mingyang, smacking him downward and creating a huge crater in the ground. Li Mingyang wasn't stunned by the blow for long, and as he struggled to get his bearings, he looked up to see fragments of metal falling through the air around him. He looked down at his gauntlets and realized that they had fissures running through them. Then he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Li Mengshan fared a bit better than her brother, and the moment she landed, she rushed to his side. The both of them had to admit it. These first grade students were absolute monsters. Now their path to victory could only be made with their soul fusion skill. Just as she was about to say something to her brother, Yu Yue appeared in front of them both in a flash of silver. Screw off. Li Mengchen snarled, thrusting out with her tiger paws and summoning two larger phantom tigers in front of her. Gu Yue thrust out with a palm of her own, shooting an azure fireball in response. The phantom paws and fireballs collided with a bang. The fireball overpowered the paws and slammed into Li Mengchen in a brilliant explosion. The blast sent her careening backward, and even as she did, a wheel of ice chased after her. Li Mengchen twisted to gain control of her trajectory and threw her arms down at the wheel of ice, relying on her gauntlets to smash it into pieces. Then she hit the ground rolling before springing to her feet. A grating growl rumbled in her throat. She was even further from her brother now. Li Mingyang had barely managed to stand when Tang Wuling walked over and stomped the ground, unleashing golden dragon shakes the earth again. Li Mingyang immediately lost his balance, the quaking earth leaving him vulnerable to a fresh barrage of summoned phantom dragons. The dragon struck him into the air yet again, but Tang Wuling did not stop there. He immediately followed up with golden dragon shocks the heavens and summoned an enormous dragon head that opened its maw and bore down upon Li Mingyang. Unable to recover, mid-flight this time, Li Mingyang was defenseless as the dragon head shot toward him. It was going to swallow him whole, but right as it threatened to chomp down on him, a silver light bloomed between them. In a flicker of movement, Elder Kai appeared above Li Mingyang. She had saved him. Elder Kai grabbed him by the collar of his shirt, then turned to Tang Wuling and nodded in satisfaction. A mountain of pressure crashed down upon Li Mengchen's shoulders, and she realized that her brother had just been eliminated. Her fourth soul ring lit up, and yet another rush of the arena. A tiger manifested before her, her martial soul having been empowered by fusing with her spirit soul. It immediately moved to pounce upon Gu Yue and use its fiery wrath to tear her apart. Yet Gu Yue stood her ground, the barest hint of a smirk forming on her mouth. A flash of silver, and Tang Wuling appeared before her, a shining knight clad in golden scales. They flashed with iridescent light, turning into a multitude of mirrors. The flaming tiger slammed into him, but the attack had no effect. His scales simply shone brighter than ever. An instant later, a draconic roar burst from him, and he thrust out his palms, summoning the dragon head once more and sending it toward Li Mengchen. A shimmer of silver, another barrier, appeared in front of Li Mengchen to block the phantom dragon head. Unlike the last time, however, the dragon head struck the silver in a cacophony of booming sound. The collision caused numerous ripples to form in the silver barrier. Silence reigned over the audience. They couldn't believe their eyes. Tang Wuling and Gu Yue stood at the center of the stage as the victors. Even now, Tang Wuling's shining scales and tyrannical aura demanded their attention. All he did was stand there, and still they felt a pressure emanating from him as though he were an immovable mountain. Off stage, Shishi stared at Tang Wuling and muttered, "Holy shit, boss really doesn't know how to hold back. Damn. He's absolutely brutal. I love it. That's how a man fights." Elder Kai put Li Mingyang down beside his sister then flew into the air. The victors of this match are Tang Wuling and Gu Yue of the first grade. That made it official. Against all expectations, the first grade had won yet again. Chapter 546, conceding. Compared to the previous duels, Tang Wuling and Gu Yue secured a wholly different sort of victory for this 2-on-2, down to the very fiber. Rather than winning by the skin of their teeth, they blasted through to victory. At the beginning of the match, the Li twins had tried to play it safe, carefully sounding out their opponent's strength. But in the end, they were blitzed. They hadn't even had a chance to unleash their soul fusion skill before getting eliminated. Devastating to the core, the twins stared at Tang Wuling and Gu Yue, faces pale and eyes wide like saucers. This wasn't just the product of their injuries, but the fear that Tang Wuling's draconic roar had struck into their hearts. Their instincts were clear. Any attempt to go against this monarch would prove futile. Clad in golden scales and surrounded by a pair of golden soul rings, Tang Wuling was a majestic knight of shining gold. Even without the use of his battle armor, he had annihilated a pair of soul masters with superior cultivation levels and 5 pieces of battle armor each, while twins couldn't, except that they lost despite having so many advantages. Subconsciously they had long since given up. Tang Wuling's scales quietly withdrew into himself, and he returned to his normal form, basking in the cheers of the first and second grades. He showed no signs of leaving the stage. Up next, the team battle. Tang Wuling and Gu Yue had decided on such domineering tactics for this match in order to set the tone for the team battle. They wanted to fire up their teammates and instill fear into the hearts of their opponents, whom they had been certain would also participate in the team battles. From the first and second grade teams waiting area, Yuan and Yui, Yue Sangyu, Xu Xiaoan, Shi, and Shu Lizzie ascended the stage one by one. They convened at Tang Wuling and Gu Yue's sides, putting up a united front. Since Yizinglen was unfit for battle, Shu Lizzie had been chosen to take her place. Face sullen, he handed Tang Wuling a bunch of recovery buns. All 7 of them stood there in solidarity. An immense wave of pressure filled the arena. Faced with these mighty juniors of theirs, the third grade team sat frozen in silence. Moments later, Li Kaiyankin alone rose from his seat and made for the stage. Before he reached it, Songlin raised a hand. "Please wait a moment." Li Kaiyankin turned back and looked at her in confusion. Songlin screwed her eyes shut and let out a long sigh. When she opened them again, they were filled with resolution. She walked onto the stage. "Excuse me, Elder Kai." Her voice rang low but steady. "We're withdrawing from the team battle. We concede." The entire arena went silent, the only sounds heard being the whirring of the gears within everyone's brains as they processed what they had heard. They're conceding. The third grade is surrendering. No way. They still have a one-word battle armor master, the strongest of the third grade, Li Kaiyankin, hasn't even gone up yet. How could they give up? Teacher Song, why? Li Kaiyankin exclaimed. Songlin turned back to face him, then cracked a bitter smile. She shook her head. "Look at your teammates. See what state they're in. We don't have any chance in the team battle like this." Li Kaiyankin gaped. After shaking himself out of his stupor, he finally directed his gaze at his teammates, and he then understood how true his teacher's words were. Moju slumped over a seat in the corner like a zombie. When Li Kaiyankin's gaze chanced upon Yu Wu, he could clearly make out the dead fish feel of his teammates' eyes. Even more demotivating was Yu Wu's fearful stare and gulping whenever caught a glance of Tang Wuling. Sighing, Li Kaiyankin turned back to the stage to observe the Li twins. The two were holding each other for comfort, obviously afraid of their opponents, and if observed long enough, slightly shaking. Finally, he turned to get a good look at his companions who had yet to battle, or tried to. Anyway, whenever he met their eyes, they would avert their gazes and lower their heads. All of their confidence was shattered by their juniors. "Teacher Song, I want to fight in this match, even if it's 1 against 7. I want to do it," Li Kaiyankin said, his fists clenched tight. Songlin shook her head again. "I don't want you to end up like Moju. My decision is final." Li Kaiyankin's breathing went ragged as he once more turned to the stage, this time to study the team of 7. It wasn't until he saw the fire in their eyes that he realized he truly was no match. After bellowing in frustration, he withdrew. This marked the defeat of the third grade, the class that was supposed to be the strongest in the outer court. It was an utterly disgraceful defeat, so much so that not even the final match had been fought in fear of earning more shame. Although the third grade still had the one-word battle armor master Li Kaiyankin in reserve, he was the only one left in his team that was fit to fight. While he thirsted for battle with these 7 mighty opponents, the rest had fear and shame struck into their hearts. Taking this into consideration, Songlin had made the right choice. If she had let them go up and suffer another defeat, she feared that not even Li Kaiyankin was resilient enough to weather such a setback. She didn't want to see her students fall any further than they already had. Up on the stage, Tang Wuling stood at the front and center of his team, the rest flanking him on either side. All 7 carried themselves as valorous young men and women. They exuded confidence and a will to prove themselves burned within. Every student of the outer court stared at them in awe. "These kids are excellent," said Yali. She had struggled to keep her voice low in the elders' viewing platform. Tang Wuling and his teammates did not cower before the sea of gazers. They stood with their backs straight and chests puffed with pride. After having spent a little over a year in Shrek Academy, Tang Wuling and his friends in the first grade had grown to a point incomparable with before. In addition to their peerless talent, they fostered a conviction that victory was certain. They would not grow timid even before a full team of battle armor masters. This was the courage of youth, the fruits of their efforts, and their strength. Chawoshi glanced at Feng Wuyu just as Feng Wuyu happened to glance at him. They stared at each other for a moment and nodded in agreement for once. Both of them smiled as they watched Tang Wuling, their hearts bursting with pride. They were also satisfied with the other kids on his team. Chawoshi and Feng Wuyu were certain that once those kids turned 18 or 19, they would become central figures in Shrek Academy and lead it into a shining new era. The pavilion master was right. "What kids that are as talented as them need is experience," muttered Chawoshi. "Well shit. I agree, Feng Wu said. Having ascended into the air, Elder Kai declared. The third graders conceded. The first and second grade team wins. A crescendo of cheers erupted across the stadium as the audience snapped out of their stupor. The loudest claps and stomps came from the first grade. They were the proudest of them all. As newcomers to Shrek Academy, they had finally established their place and cemented their position today with a feat deemed nigh impossible. They had defeated the third grade, the greatest of the outer court, to now stand at a new peak. The chances of a class appearing in the next few years to dethrone them was zero. While Tang Wuling pumped his fists into the air and cheered with his teammates, Xu Lizzie was all smiles as he ran off stage, arms outstretched to a newly awake Ye's England. She yelled when he scooped her up into his arms and ran back on stage. We're the best. Xu Lizzie grinned. Ye's England blushed crimson. Elle let me down. Her body was still too weak to put up a resistance. Huh? What did you say? Xu Lizzie shouted back at her, his voice nearly drowned out in the cheering. I said let me down. Ye's England glared at him. Huh? Are you afraid I'll drop you? Don't worry, I'll hold you tight. Xu Lizzie said, tightening his arms around her. You damned fatty. Ye's England pinched his arm. It made Xu Lizzie look down, facing her with a goofy grin. In a dull mood, Li Kaiankin led the third grade out of the arena. They didn't belong in this scene of glory, but before the of seven could bask in their glory for longer, Elder Kai spoke again in a booming voice. I have something to announce. Her aura flared with a hint of the strength the title Douluo held, silencing the arena in an instant. Chapter 547, The Continent of Douluo. The gazes of everyone present converged on Elder Kai. She held her head high, peering down at the arena. The first and second grades displayed exceptional strength today. The academy has decided to pick a group of students from the lower grades in 6 months. They will be sent on an exchange trip to Douluo, and it will last 1 year. You would all do well to earn a spot in this exchange. Douluo. Tang Wuling stared at Elder Kai in astonishment. Douluo was a whole different continent and a land he knew nothing about. He could only imagine the sort of marvels there. Being chosen for the delegation was certain in Tang Wuling's opinion. After all, he was the class president of the first grade. Confident, he felt his thoughts wandering. That master-disciple pair who challenged Zhen Huan into a blacksmithing match should also be from Douluo. So I'm going on an exchange to their homeland? I can't believe it. Although a wonderful opportunity to broaden his horizons, Tang Wuling wasn't actually excited about it. Ever since entering Shrek Academy, his growth skyrocketed thanks to the wealth of resources available, as well as the Tang sex offering. By the time Tang Wuling moved to the second grade, he reckoned that with a bit of luck, he would already be a one-word battle armor master. At that po-adient, he would only be 16 years old, surely a famous figure in all of Shrek Academy. Tang Wuling would have no trouble entering the inner court, slowly and steadily walking down the path to greatness. However, this exchange trip to Douluo threw a wrench in his plans. He had no idea what to expect from it. It wasn't just Tang Wuling who was at a loss. The companions at his side were also taken by surprise. They stared Elder Kai vacantly, all except for Gu Yue, who was deep in thought, and a frowning Yuan and Yui. With the announcement over and the competition concluded, the audience began leaving in droves, each heading off to cultivate with renewed resolution. After there were the competitors, Tang Wuling maintained a thoughtful silence all the way back to the working students' dormitory before he spoke. Yuan and Sang Yu, don't go to your rooms just yet. We should discuss what Elder Kai said today. All right, Yuan and Yui and Yui's Sang Yu answered together, stopping and turning to face Tang Wuling. They stared at him, the dormitory still and quiet. What do you guys know about Douluo? Tang Wuling asked. She perked up. Oh, I know a bit. He cleared his throat, practically hopping in excitement. Tens of thousands of years ago, there were 2 great empires on Douluo, the Heaven Dou Empire and the Douluo Empire. There were a few small countries sprinkled between them, but they were pretty much insignificant. About 10,000 years ago, the tectonic plates shifted and moved the Sun-Moon continent toward us, so that they bordered Douluo. At that point, the Heaven Dou Empire had been split into 2 smaller countries. The Sun-Moon continent was rich in resources and possessed soul technology. With those 2 factions so close to each other, war naturally broke out. His voice lowered, a sense of solemn growing. That was the beginning of the era that the spirit Ice Douluo Huo Yuao had lived. In the end, the Sun-Moon Empire won and annexed the 2 nations that once composed the Heaven Dou Empire. Then just as the Sun-Moon Empire was preparing to attack the Douluo Empire, spirit Ice Huo Yuao and Dragon Butterfly Tang Wutong led their comrades to defend it. What happened during that battle isn't clear, but the Sun-Moon Empire halted their assault, and they were stuck in a stalemate for many years. The surviving members of Heaven Dou's imperial family led their people to escape overseas and found a new continent to occupy. This is what we now know as the Heaven Dou continent. Meanwhile, the Sun-Moon Empire gained strength on the Douluo continent, but Spirit Ice Huo Yuao and Dragon Butterfly Tang Wutong had already ascended to godhood, so they couldn't intervene in the politics of mortals. Without their help, the Douluo Empire was put on the defensive. They secretly sent out a fleet to explore the seas and also found a new continent, this one rich with resources. Shishi's gaze darkened, and so began their top-secret plans to migrate their entire population there. They all left at once. From then on, the Sun-Moon Empire had total control of the entire Douluo continent. As time passed, the Sun-Moon Empire changed into the modern-day Sun-Moon Federation. So according to history, both the Douluo and Heaven Dou people were originally natives to Douluo, and they fostered a deep grudge against the Federation. If we really do go on this exchange to Douluo, I don't think we'll be received well. There'll be a lot of challenges. Yue's Hang Yu nodded. Yeah. Shishi's got the gist of it. My understanding is about the same as his. If we go to Douluo, there'll definitely be lots of people who want to cause us trouble. But still, I find this opportunity very interesting. Exploring a foreign country sounds fun. The academy will definitely ensure our safety anyway, and I heard that Douluo is sending a group of students here on exchange too. He shrugged. In any case, we have no idea what the culture is like over there and there's no harm in going, so I think it's a good idea. I bet they're not as advanced as us though. Tang Wuling glanced at Yuan and Yui. What are your thoughts on this? Yuan and Yui had her lips pressed together tight. After a moment, she nodded. I'm accustomed to life here, so I don't really want to go. We're all making good progress on our cultivation too. We could accomplish a lot in 1 year. Tang Wuling put his hand to his chin and nodded. I'm pretty sure you're going to get picked for the exchange. You're the class president of the second grade after all, and since they're having us go, I'm certain the academy will aid us in our cultivation as compensation. Yuan and Yui shrugged again. Hey, if we're going then we're going. You think you'll be able to forge enough spirit alloys in the next 6 months? Tang Wuling scrunched his nose. Huh? You're that anxious to become a battle armor master? Well, I can definitely forge the metals, but there's no way in hell I can craft the armor. Yuan and Yui rolled her eyes at him. PFT. Let's at least create 1 full set by then. If all 8 of us work together, it's definitely possible. A light flickered into existence within Tang Wuling's eyes. What are you saying? All you have to do is forge enough spirit alloys for the 8 of us to make a complete set of armor. Focus on that and don't worry about anything else. Then we'll all work together and to complete a set for 1 person. During the year abroad in Douluo, we'll continue using the stockpile of metal to craft more pieces of battle armor. If we do this, our progress shouldn't be impacted too much. Tang Wuling's eyes flicked over to Ye's England. She was the most talented armor crafter they had. I'm still just a 5th rank mecha maker, said Ye's England. Before I reach the 6th rank I can't complete a full set, and I'm not skilled enough to craft some of the final core components yet. I guess I'll just have to do my best to break through in the next 6 months. Tang Wuling nodded, a grin forming on his face. Great. Then we'll be focusing on getting you a complete set of armor. Once you've got a full set, making the rest of our armors will go by much faster. Yuan and Sang Yu, you two are fine with this? Yeah. Sounds fine, Yuan and Yui said, slowly nodding. Same with me, Yue Sang Yu said. But I'm a mecha maker too. I have to craft my own armor. I'll just take it slow I guess. He smiled. I'm fine with investing resources into England. Having just reached the 5th rank, it would be more efficient to pour their resources into Ye's England. Furthermore, he had been convinced of her strength after witnessing the battle earlier today. She had won honor even in defeat and paid a hefty price for the sake of their team's final victory. If she hadn't taken out Moju from the team battle, then there was no way the 3rd grade would have conceded. Not with a pair of one-word battle armor masters in the team battle. Their chances of winning would have been abysmal against such opponents. Then let's work hard together for the next few months, Tang Wuling said as he put his hand in the center of their circle for a cheer. Gu Yue quickly claimed the spot above his with her own. Then the rest of the team followed. They cheered. Today was a day worthy of celebration. On this day, the working students united as one to work toward a common goal. The days that followed were bustling with activities, with Tang Wuling and his friends setting a prime example. The studious atmosphere enveloped the first grade was far more focused than any of the other grades. The entire first grade was burning with the desire to become strong and gain the acknowledgement of their peers at Shrek Academy. Apart from Tang Wuling, every one of his teammates already possessed 4 soul rings. As such, he only had 2 objectives each day: cultivate soul power and forge spirit alloys. The students selected for the exchange to Douluo were soon revealed. Of the first grade, Tang Wuling, Yu Yue, Yu Xinglin, Shu Lizzie, Shi Shi, and Shu Shaoan were picked. For the second, Yuan and Yui and Yue Zhang made it. To no one's surprise, all 8 working students were selected. Wu Zhangkong was assigned as the teacher in charge of them, while Silver Moon Douluo Kai Yu would act as their leader. Tang Wuling and his friends were happy that Wu Zhangkong was coming with them, but the fact that Elder Kai was as well gave them mixed feelings about the whole exchange. How hard she had been on them during their entrance exam, they hadn't forgotten. Chapter 548, Dreams of Rank 40. Half a year flew by like the wind. Naya sat at a stone table tucked away at the edges of Spirit Ice Plaza, swinging her legs gently in the air. Her dress, long and well-fitting, allowed a glimpse of the fair skin below her thighs. Her hair was draped over her back, silver strands gently swaying as a breeze passed by. She angled her face toward the twilight sky. Big brother, when are you leaving? Also enjoying the view above, Tang Wuling turned to Naya and answered, I'm not sure. Probably in the next few days. Oh. Teacher wouldn't let me go with you. Naya pouted. Tang Wuling chuckled and ruffled her hair. It's not like I'm going away forever. I'll be back in a year. But that didn't seem to alleviate her concerns. Her expression became morose. Are you really going to leave me all alone here? We don't know what things are like in Douluo either. I'm worried. Tang Wuling's playful smile melted into one of warmth as he began stroking her hair. Naya, be good for me. Everything has already been decided. He cleared his throat. Anyway, how's your one-word battle armor coming along? Naya shook her head and sighed. I'm still missing the last piece. Good luck with it. I know you can do it. And who knows, by the time your big bro returns, maybe I'll already be a one-word battle armor master. Tang Wuling grinned, and Naya couldn't help but grin as well. No way that'll happen. She cocked her brow. You still only have 1 piece of armor. How could you possibly finish a complete set in 1 year? PSH. Ever heard of talent? Naya giggled. Big brother, when did you become so arrogant? You haven't even reached rank 40 yet, and you've been so busy lately that you haven't even had any time to play with me. Jeez. How far are you from breaking through? Feeling the heat on him, Tang Wuling nervously laughed. I'm at rank 38. Still got 2 more ranks to go. I'm a late bloomer, you know. That's why my cultivation is slow. This matter had been giving him a headache for the past 6 months. Despite all his efforts, he was still chasing after rank 39. He had hoped to make rank 40 by the time he left for the exchange. That way he could officially become a 6th rank blacksmith and nab a 2nd spirit soul for a 4th soul ring. But looking at the few days he had left, that hope was impossible, which was a shame, since simply by raising his soul power rank, these strength bottlenecks would have been eliminated. Meanwhile, his comrades had all made good progress. Yuan and Yui had the highest cultivation at rank 45. Yu Yue and Yue Zhang tied for 2nd at rank 44. Yi Xinglin sat comfortably at rank 43, and Shi Shi, Shu Shaoan, and Shu Lizzie all achieved rank 42. In contrast, he the captain was a whopping 4 ranks below the weakest of his friends. Ever since they had broken rank 40, his comrades saw their strength skyrocket. On the other hand, Tang Wuling made little progress even after pushing himself hard to grow his soul power. The only significant growth he saw was in his blood essence, which became even more vigorous than before. As time passed and he continued making little progress, his fear of getting left behind grew greater and greater. Thinking about this was a surefire way to depress his mood. Don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll break through soon enough. Just think about how awesome you'll be once you get your 4th ring. Naya beamed. Tang Wuling perked up immediately, her words hitting their mark. As he broke more of the seals on the Golden Dragon King, his soul power evolved. Although it didn't increase quantitatively, it grew more dense and solid. The pure white soul power he cultivated with the mysterious heaven method was now a golden liquid energy. So even though he was only at rank 38, his combat strength was no weaker than that of his companions. The real problem was that although his foundation was solid, his low soul power rank prevented him from breaking through to the next level in any of his other skills. Then I'll take your words to heart and be hopeful. Tang Wuling had been thirsting for rank 40 for a long time now, eager to become stronger and gain the qualifications to become a one-word battle armor master. At that moment, Tang Wuling's communicator rang. He whipped it out and smiled when he saw the number of the caller. It was Mu Chen. Hello, Teacher Mu, Tang Wuling answered. Are you on campus? Mu Chen asked in his clear and calm voice. Yes, teacher. Come to the front gates, Mu Chen said. Okay. I'll be there in a moment. Tang Wuling hung up the call, turning to Naya. Teacher Mu is here, so I need to go see him. You're going back to the inner court now? Yeah. Naya said somewhat reluctantly. Great. Flashing a smile, Tang Wuling waved goodbye and ran off for the campus gates without another glance. As Naya watched Tang Wuling leave, a voice snapped her out of her longing gaze. It's impossible for you to go with him. Naya turned around. Standing right before her was Yu Yue, the latter's eyes shining bright. Naya pushed down on the stone table and rose to her feet. She climbed on top of the table. Why not? Don't you know what love is? Her words dripped with ire. Yu Yue met Naya's gaze in silence. Faced with no counterattack, Naya quickly regained her calm. She shot Yu Yue a glare then jumped down, her hair waving as she stormed off. When Naya's figure could no longer be seen, Yu Yue finally moved from her spot. Alone in this corner of the Spirit Ice Plaza, she allowed herself one soft muttering of a sentence. Do I know what love is? Tang Wuling reached the front gates in a flash. To his surprise, it wasn't just Mu Chen waiting for him at the gate. Zhenhua was present as well. Upon seeing Tang Wuling, Zhenhua grinned, his eyes lighting up with his face. Tang Wuling hurried over to greet them. Teacher. Uncle Master. Mu Chen smiled. That was fast. I thought you would be another couple of minutes. Tang Wuling laughed bashfully. Why are you two here? If there's something you wanted, you could have just called me and I would have went over to you. Private matters shouldn't be discussed at the association, Mu Chen said. Private matters? Tang Wuling raised a brow. Mu Chen glanced at Zhenhua, passing the ball to him. We're here this time to give you a gift, Zhenhua said as he held out his right hand to Tang Wuling. Sitting in his palm was a white badge. 6 twinkling stars graced its surface. This. Tang Wuling's jaw dropped as he looked back and forth between the badge and Zhenhua. But Uncle Master, I haven't reached the 6th rank yet. Zhenhua smiled wryly. Actually, common sense would dictate that you've long since earned the qualifications to call yourself a 6th rank blacksmith. It was only because of your weak soul power that you hadn't been able to make the last step. Once you achieve a breakthrough, spirit refining should be easy for you. Your foundation is more than sturdy enough now. You're about to leave for Douluo for a whole year, so I'm sure you'll be able to break rank 40 sometime during that. That's why I decided to award you your badge now. I'm certain you'll have earned it by the time you return. Take it, Mu Chen urged. Your Uncle Master personally forged it for you. There was a sour note in his voice with the last few words. He had no choice but to admit that he couldn't compare with Zhenhua as a blacksmith. There was no competing with the only living divine blacksmith. Thank you, Uncle Master. Thank you, teacher. Tang Wuling bowed his head low. It was unprecedented for the president of the Blacksmiths Association to personally forge the badge for a 6th rank blacksmith, and to award it early too. Be safe and quickly make a breakthrough in your cultivation, Zhenhua said, tone hardening. Again, your foundation is superb, but your soul power is lagging behind. If your soul power is still growing so slowly when you return from Douluo, we'll help you think of a method to fix that. Thank you, Uncle Master. Tang Wuling understood just what method Zhenhua was alluding to, but he didn't want to walk that path. He still wanted to progress solely with his own efforts. In the past year, Tang Wuling may not have increased his soul power much, but his soul power perception skills had improved and his understanding of his blue silver grass had deepened. If he used heavenly treasures to boost his cultivation, the cultivation foundation would definitely suffer. Zhenhua's stern expression melted back into a kind smile. I'm sure you'll encounter a few nice surprises during your trip to Douluo. Nice surprises? What? Tang Wuling furrowed his brow inquisitively. Zhenhua smirked. I shouldn't ruin the surprise for you. You'll find out soon enough, so just be patient. Tang Wuling looked to Mu Chen in an appeal for help. Unfortunately for him, Mu Chen merely shook his head and gave a mysterious smile of his own. Well then, that's about everything. We should get going now, said Zhenhua. Have a good trip. With that he and Mu Chen left together. Chapter 549. What's going on with you today? As Tang Wuling watched Zhenhua and Mu Chen depart, he started to wonder what surprises they were talking about. There's no way I would come across someone I know in Douluo. Is there? Nah, that's impossible. What could they have meant? This mystery stumped Tang Wuling, so he decided to worry about it later and just went back to campus. He only had a few days before his departure, and there were many things he still had to take care of. First, he needed to visit the Tang sect. He was currently a white class agent of the Battle Hall, so he needed to report whenever he left campus. Ever since he joined the Battle Hall, Tang Wuling hadn't been assigned a single mission, yet he still received an immense amount of cultivation resources. He was even awarded bonus contribution points when he sold medals to the Tang sect. He was reaping the benefits of membership, so it was important to report that he would be gone for a year. Tang Wuling absent-mindedly walked to the Tang sect, not even thinking about the path he took. The moment he arrived, he found Dou Xiaoshu, Hall Master of the Battle Hall, standing outside the door. I already know you're leaving for Douluo, Dou Xiaoshu said as Tang Wuling approached, giving him a warm smile. While you're there, remember to keep quiet, observe your surroundings, and stay safe. Come back in one piece, and don't forget to bring your white class agent badge. He rummaged through his coat for a moment, then took out a letter. You won't be able to contact us all the way in Douluo, so take this letter to the local Tang sect headquarters and give it to the person in charge. If you run into any trouble, you can ask them for help. Huh? Tang Wuling gawked at the man. Hall Master, we have a branch on the Douluo continent. What do you think? Dou Xiaoshu chuckled. We even have branches on the Heaven Dou continent. We're not the only ones either. The Spirit Pagoda can be found on all 3 continents as well, and they have even more overseas branches. The ocean cannot combine organizations like ours, but Shrek Academy doesn't have any overseas branches, of course. That would just be silly. They don't care about expanding over there at all. Then Dou Xiaoshu's gaze sharpened. You're still young, so going on this trip will broaden your horizons. You're calm, mature for your age, so I'm sure you'll keep a cool head if anything happens. Don't forget that your agent badge has a button you can press to call for help. Don't hesitate to press it. The moment you do, any agents in the vicinity will rush to your aid. Understood? Tang Wuling replied. He actually wouldn't have remembered this function of the badge if the Hall Master hadn't said anything. With that, Dou Xiaoshu bid Tang Wuling farewell. As he left the Tang sect, he looked up at the sky above him. It seemed strangely dull, more so than usual. I hope something good comes out of this exchange trip. Tang Wuling sighed and looked back on his progress. He originally planned to break through to rank 40, become a 6th rank blacksmith, and gain a 2nd spirit soul and 4th soul ring before he left. All he had managed to do was become a 6th rank blacksmith, and he had only accomplished that through his connections with Zhenhua. This left him disappointed in himself. Then his mind turned to his team's progress. Since they had chosen to focus on completing Yingling's battle armor first, she was only 3 pieces away from having a full set. Everyone else still only had 1 piece of armor, but Tang Wuling had no complaints about that. Once Yingling became a 1-word battle armor master, she would be able to crank out armor pieces far faster than before. Then the rest of the team would quickly become 1-word battle armor masters as well. Tang Wuling had forged more than enough spirit alloys needed to complete everyone's armor, so they could continue making armor even in Douluo. Tang Wuling took out his soul communicator and tapped the screen a few times, placing a call. The call was quickly answered, and Gu Yue's voice rang in his ear. What is it? Gu Yue, can you get me a ticket for the Spirit Ascension platform? The intermediate one. I should be able to. What are you planning? I've been working hard at Cultivation, but I haven't seen much progress, Tang Wuling said. I want to go vent my frustration. I'm not going to reach rank 40 by the time we depart anyway, so I thought some exercise would be good for me. Okay. Where are you? Gu Yue asked. I'm by the Tang sect headquarters. Wait for me there. I'll head over now and we can go together. How reliable. Tang Wuling smiled. Thanks. A few minutes later, a cab pulled up in front of Tang Wuling. The door opened to reveal Gu Yue, who gestured for Tang Wuling to get in. He did just that, strapped himself in, and they were off. You're coming with me into the Spirit Ascension platform? Tang Wuling asked. When she nodded in response, he grinned and he took her hand in his own. Great. As if she had been struck by lightning, Gu Yue yanked her hand from his. Tang Wuling's mind swirled with confusion. He had always been one for skinship, and Gu Yue had never rejected him like this. Only now did he realize that she seemed to be in a strange mood. He looked into her eyes and saw himself, as if he were gazing at his own reflection in a cold, indifferent mirror. What's wrong? He asked. Boys and girls should not do anything inappropriate before marriage, Gu Yue said coldly. Tang Wuling was baffled. You didn't have a problem with it before. Remember all those times you pulled me by the hand? Gu Yue's expression went stiff. She slowly turned her head away from him and looked out the window, refusing to acknowledge him. Tang Wuling scratched his chin awkwardly. A woman's heart truly was as turbulent as a stormy sea. Such inexplicable behavior made him want to scream in frustration. It was impossible for him to comprehend the vast machinations of a woman's mind. He had no other choice but to stay silent and keep to himself. The cab quickly took them out of Shrek in the city. The entire drive consisted of awkward silence in which Gu Yue ignored Tang Wuling, and him trying to avoid her eye. This continued until they reached the headquarters of the Spirit Pagoda. Once there, Gu Yue paid the driver, exited the cab and led the way to the Spirit Pagoda with Tang Wuling rushing to keep up with her. With a flash of her badge, the two of them were granted entry. Tang Wuling had been busy cultivating ever since he arrived at Shrek Academy, so he hadn't had a chance to visit the local Spirit Ascension platform yet. In fact, today he was only here on a whim. He recalled his time in the Spirit Ascension platform back in East City, how his team's combat skills had been honed through countless visits. The Spirit Ascension platform was located in the rear of the building, and it took them 2 different elevator rides to reach it. After passing through 2 checkpoints, they arrived at a room filled with high-tech equipment, screens lining the walls, and familiar capsules. We want to enter the intermediate Spirit Ascension platform, Gu Yue said to the staff member in the room. Got it, the staff member answered. They didn't say anything, but they did raise a curious brow at Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling leaned over to Gu Yue and whispered, how much does it cost to enter the intermediate Spirit Ascension platform here? Gu Yue rolled her eyes at him and just entered a capsule. Tang Wuling furrowed his brow. What's with her today? Did I do something to upset her? If I knew she was going to be like this, I wouldn't have even asked to come here. It doesn't seem like we'll work well together at the moment. As we are now, how long will we even last in there? Despite all of Tang Wuling's reservations, he was already here. It was too late to back out. Besides, the last time he had entered the Spirit Ascension platform was back in East City. He was eager to see just how much stronger he was now. After entering a capsule of his own, the door closed over him. As various instruments scanned him, he shut his eyes, and soon enough, energy fluctuations enveloped him, and a wave of vertigo washed over his body. A minute later, the sensation faded. He took a breath of fresh air and opened his eyes to see a verdant forest around him. He had arrived in the Spirit Ascension platform. The first thing he noticed was the forest. He could see no difference between it and what he could remember of the Spirit Ascension platform back at East City. Then after a quick scan of his surroundings, he saw Gu Yue standing a few meters away from him. Tang Wuling immediately walked over to stand in front of her, got up and eye scanning the perimeter for movement. He then began to slowly advance. Although it had been a long time since he came to the Spirit Ascension platform, he still remained vigilant. A powerful soul beast could attack them at any moment. Caution was key to their survival. As he was focused on that, Gu Yue just stood there gazing at him from behind. His back was broad and taut with power. His dashing figure left her heart in turmoil. He just looked so reliable. Tang Wuling had grown over the past half year. He was taller, his shoulders broader, and his face more handsome. He was young, only 15, yet he was nearly 2 meters tall. His face still contained traces of immaturity, but he already looked like a man. He also possessed strength that earned him the position of class president of the 1st grade. That only served to make him even more appealing. Countless girls in the 1st and 2nd grades swooned whenever they saw him. A majority of those girls had made advances toward him. In fact, Gu Yue had even noticed Wu Sijuo's heated gaze fixed upon him at times, but Tang Wuling was oblivious to all of it. He was too busy with cultivation and blacksmithing. Gu Yue bit her lip and furrowed her brow. Do I really not know what love is? It was then that Tang Wuling glanced back at her. She was rooted to her original spot, having yet to take a single step to follow him. Gu Yue's odd behavior was acceptable outside, but such actions would only put them in danger in the intermediate Spirit Ascension platform. Danger was always lurking around the corner, and soul beasts would not miss an opportunity to strike. Are you okay? Tang Wuling asked. You've been acting weird all day. His voice snapped Gu Yue out of her stupor, and she walked over to join him. Are you okay? Tang Wuling asked again. He raised his hand to touch her forehead. Gu Yue quickly brushed his hand aside. I'm fine. Tang Wuling studied her face for a moment, then he turned around and continued to lead the way forward. Chapter 550, Diamond Boar Herd. Tang Wuling and Gu Yue's spiritual powers were both in the spirit sea realm, so their senses were able to reach as far as 100 meters away and perceive even the slightest stir in the grass. Gu Yue summoned 2 spheres of wind element in the palm of her hand. With a slight push she infused it into their bodies, boosting their speed. Sensing that her mood was back to normal, Tang Wuling finally relaxed a bit. If we stay until tomorrow morning, then we should have about 15 hours to spend here. After that, we should pick up the pace and head deeper within the forest. With their current strength, ordinary soul beasts posed no threat to them. Tang Wuling hadn't even thought of advancing his spirit souls and was here purely to release some stress. Brutally beating some soul beasts would do that for someone. Tang Wuling's spiritual power spread like the tendrils of some mighty vine, instantly increasing his range of perception several times. Indeed, he could access the network of shared consciousness of blue silver grass. While he hadn't made much progress in his soul power cultivation in the past 6 months, the same could not be said about his connection with plants. Far off in the distance, a light flashed in the air. Tang Wuling immediately leapt after it, but before his fingers could even graze the unknown object, it pulled away in a blur of motion, and off it flew. I think it was a bird, Tang Wuling said when he landed. He had no interest in fighting weak soul beasts. He quickened his pace and they trod further into the forest. Mere seconds later, something akin to the sound of muffled thunder shook through the trees. It startled Tang Wuling and Gu Yue, but the source of the sound was clearly far away. To gather more information of where the sound originated, Tang Wuling dropped down to his belly and pressed his ear to the ground. He silently listened for the voices of the blue silver grass, his important network. What he heard instead were cries of fear. I think it's a pack of soul beasts. Let's climb up a tree and get to a good vantage point first. Tang Wuling swiftly approached Gu Yue, grabbing her by the waist as he used both perplexing step to scale the trunk of a nearby tree. In an instant, they reached the canopy, perched on a particularly thick branch. Tang Wuling steadied himself by grabbing onto a small branch above him, while Gu Yue leaned against the rough bark of the trunk. It sounds like they're coming toward us, and there's a lot of them. Tang Wuling furrowed his brow at the rumbling thunder coming their way. From the sound of the footsteps, the beasts seemed large and heavy. The tree they had climbed began to sway as the pack neared. Just what kind of beasts are coming? How big could they be? Tang Wuling gritted his teeth as he used his purple demon eyes to peer toward the incoming pack. As soon as it entered his view and his complexion paled. Shit. This is going to be troublesome. It's a herd of diamond boars. Diamond boars were a type of soul beast that moved in large herds, weighing over 2 tons, while also 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. Diamond boars were the epitome of gigantic. They had no concept of fear and acted erratically, to the point that even lions and tigers feared them. They had heads as hard as steel and 3 pairs of spear-like tusks. Once diamond boars charged, there was no stopping them. In fact, even some of the physically strongest soul beasts would rather run than face a stampeding herd of diamond boars. Each and every boar came charging with the force of over 20,000 kilograms. The tusks of diamond boars were exceptionally hard and dense, perfect for carvings. As a result, in the distant past, they were hunted to extinction for those prized tusks. Yet they had been perfectly recreated in the spirit ascension platform. Soon, the splintering of whole tree trunks was added to the cacophony. It was impossible for ordinary trees to stand before full-grown diamond boars. Tang Wuling peered down. His shiver was fueled by an ill premonition. This tree's probably only 100 years old. If it slammed into, right at that moment, adjacent trees groaned and toppled down. He could see the boars easily through the cleared space after the dust had fallen. In the lead was a boar twice as large as the rest of the herd, covered in thick, black hair that stood erect like steel needles. No tree, thin or thick, could stand in its way. Shit. Just how bad is our luck? We just got here and we're already facing such a troublesome opponent. Gu Yue, be careful, Tang Wuling said. All they could do was pray that the boars would somehow miss their tree. However, the chances of that seemed slim as the leader of the herd was heading toward them. A boom filled the air as their tree split apart and toppled. In a flash of silver, the two teleported high into the air, but since Gu Yue's teleportation range decreased when taking someone along with her, they were still many meters away from the nearest tree. With Gu Yue holding onto his back tightly, Tang Wuling shot out a strand of blue silver grass toward the nearest tree branch. Just before they could land, the herd of diamond boars plowed through this tree as well. Free fall. Tang Wuling's instinct screamed for him to take action, his mind operating with renewed clarity. He released a strand of blue silver grass once more toward another tree, but the boars continued their rampage. Splintered bark littered the forest floor in the herd's wake. Tang Wuling had no choice but to frantically and continuously swing from tree to tree with Gu Yue on his back, using his bind soul skill to keep them off the ground. Gu Yue wrapped her arms around Tang Wuling's neck and her legs around his waist, pressing her body so tight to his that she could hear his thumping heartbeat. The way Tang Wuling didn't panic in this crisis and calmly responded as needed warmed her heart with a sense of security. She rested her cheek on his neck and closed her eyes. As they flew through the air, the warmth and security he gave her melted her icy mood. A gentle smile spread on her lips. We don't have much time left together, so I might as well enjoy what we have left. Hey, can you loosen your hold? Grumbled Tang Wuling. You're strangling me. Gu Yue hadn't realized she tightened her hold around his neck. Embarrassed, she quickly relaxed her grip. She clicked her tongue. How could a weak girl like me possibly strangle you? Tang Wuling shot out another strand of grass and swung from it, sending them soaring into the air. As the wind struck his face and gravity began to pull him back into free fall, he felt as if he were a monkey freely swinging through the trees. He couldn't help but smile at the thought. And I'm just a weak pretty boy. You should be the one protecting me. Gu Yue snorted at his remark and lightly slapped him on the shoulder. The herd had finally passed by, leaving only a trail of destruction behind them. Tang Wuling landed them on a branch near the top of a tree, then jumped toward the ground. Teleport, Tang Wuling said to Gu Yue. As long as Gu Yue teleported them down, they wouldn't pick up any more momentum and crash land. Yet she just clung onto him tightly without doing anything, lost in her daydreams. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.